Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking with an urban planner, designer. She's also the Urban Sun Passive Solar Home Design business owner and a net zero homeowner. Net zero, isn't that something to do with telephones, one might ask? No, we're going to be talking today about net zero homes. I'd like to welcome on the program today Catherine Gray of Solar Oregon. Catherine, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
It's great to be here, Dan.
Now, tell us what Solar Oregon is.
Well, Solar Oregon is a nonprofit organization. It's about 30 years old, and our mission is to provide education on the benefits of using solar energy. That can either be in a passive solar home or with solar photovoltaic panels or solar thermal hot water panels, and we just help educate the public on how they can go about doing that.
Now, it's kind of interesting because solar power has been around for about how long now? I mean, how long have we actually been exploring and using solar power, in other words?
Well, if you're talking about like photovoltaic cells, that comes from about the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Passive solar homes were most popularized by Plato back in, Greek times. So it's, that's a very old technology to use for heating homes. It's, there's a lot of literature about the Chinese having used it 6,000 years ago. But and then with thermal, where that's basically where you're heating hot water up on your roof and then storing it, and that's probably a good, maybe 100 years been used in one way or another. So there's a real history, a real tradition. But for PVs, it's somewhat more recent.
Now, the reason I asked that, it seems that this is something that's really, it's sort of mainstream, but it kind of hangs back as though something's blocking. It seems like it would be further along than it is in home usage. Why do you think there's been kind of a stall? I mean, that's a perception I have, but, what's going on there?
Well, very honestly, it's because fossil fuels are so heavily subsidized by the American public.
Ah.
And, it's very hard to get funding for alternative energies. We don't really think of them as alternative. Solar energy is really, in our view, the basic energy that all other energy comes from. But that's really the economics of it is that, we spend billions in subsidies to coal, gas, natural gas, oil, and, it's very hard to get money out of Congress for any of the wind, solar, any of those.
Now, Catherine, net zero home, what is that?
Well, we call it goal net zero because it's not that easy to get there, but basically that's a home or a building that produces as much energy on its site, from its site, that it actually demands in energy. So it's on an annualized basis, really, because obviously in the winter we don't get as much solar. For example, here in Oregon, at any rate, in the summer we get more than we can use. So we produce that we have a demand. We really have to come at it from two sides. One is to create a building that uses as little energy as it's possible, just feasible to do. So that means, really super weatherization, super energy efficiencies. So to get the demand down using Energy Star appliances, all those kind of strategies. And then when we get the demand down low enough, it doesn't take that many PV panels, photovoltaic panels, to produce enough electricity to provide the difference, to offset the difference. And in the summer, of course, we have a metered system here in Oregon. So in the summer, as you produce more solar energy, more electricity than you can use by solar, you sell it back to the power companies, and they credit that to you. And so over that course of a year, you actually what you sell back to the electricity providers should offset what you use.
Mm-hmm. You know, and you take a look at something like that you're just describing, and people would say, boy, that's such an ideal situation, but something kind of tells me that power companies really don't want to go in that direction. They like profits, and the idea of actually buying and crediting people seems that would kind of offset their ability to do so. Is that kind of what goes on sometimes?
Well, you know, I think there's some of that, but, you know, on the other hand, it's incredibly expensive to produce power.
Well, that's true. It's expensive,
so.
you know, ecologically especially.
Yeah, so, you know, if they can get homeowners to at least put up part of the money, maybe the majority of the money to put solar collectors on their roof, you know, that distributed energy, you know, is actually pretty economical for the power companies. And that's why you have the Energy Trust, and which represents Pacific Power and PGE and Northwest Natural, you know, encouraging that kind of conservation.
Now, what's your passion with all this? How did you get started and go the direction that you go?
Wow. Well, you know, as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm an urban planner and a home designer, and so way back in the 70s, I was going to graduate school, and these are the days of the Arab oil embargo, and I was trying to go to school. I had children, small children. I was dropping them off at daycare. I was, you know, getting in lines, long gas lines, waiting. So that was part of the context. And then at the time that I was going to graduate school was just at the advent of systems, the whole discipline of systems, and we were learning that, you know, we had the Club of Rome doing their developing their modeling programs, which were telling us that, you know, at some point out here in the future, we were going to start running out of oil and other resources. So it made a huge impact on me. And then I went to work after that, working for the city of Portland. And, you know, we were at that point, Senate Bill 100 coming out of our legislature was saying, you know, we basically had to look at our cities and see how we were wasting energy, because at that point everybody was really thinking, really focused on energy, because we were in the middle of an energy crisis. So I just got I came across passive solar design as an option of a way that we could really build buildings that would have, you know, half the energy use, literally, here in Portland. So that just got me really fired up, and I think I've spent, you know, every waking hour ever since then, you know, really on that journey to develop homes that, you know, could use less and less energy and take advantage increasingly of the energy budget that falls on every square inch of land here in Portland and in our state, and how we can use that.
I was just recently looking through, I think it was a Futurist magazine, and there was a design that the Japanese were looking to create, which would actually wrap solar panels around the moon. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting enough. You know, if you're able to actually do that, then you kind of beam the energy down to Earth. But I thought, now they've found a way to basically monopolize a natural resource that you didn't think they'd be able to do before. And I'm thinking, when is this ever going to end?
Isn't that true? And, you know, I think you're really onto something, Dan, because it is harder to monopolize solar power than, you know, a hydro dam or a coal plant or an oil field, or, you know, I think that's some of the you know, the economics that play. But, you know, I mean, why not just, you know, open up the land that sun's already falling on rather than fly rockets to the moon? And put, you know, I mean, that's just so, you know.
Well, yeah, that's what was in the magazine. I found that funny because, you know, you take a look at oil, okay, so oil companies have found a way to basically run the government, you know, and I'm not talking about being conspiratorial in any way, shape, or form, but really that's what it all leads to. In fact, I had actually, some time back, we were talking about alternative energies, and I thought, if it got to a point that a home starts getting into the plus, in other words, they're actually storing energy. They don't even have to buy energy from anybody anymore.
Right.
And as I was alluding to earlier, wouldn't companies start having a problem with that? And you just kind of wonder when that ever ends, sort of a thing. But now, I know that you have educational events such as Goal Net Zero workshops and home tours. Tell us about what that's all about.
Well, our Goal Net Zero workshop and home tour, which is an annual event, it's our kind of signature event, and we spend the time preceding that tour finding usually about 4 homes that are really exemplary of a Goal Net Zero home. They've done an outstanding job of, creating a home that has very little demand for energy by, virtue of a very super efficient building envelope. And they've then gone, they've added to make up that little bit of energy need that they still have left over. They're adding PVs or thermal solar. So we find the best of those, and this year we really have been trying to look at, really affordable approaches to that. If money's no object, you can do it a lot easier than if you're doing it on a tight budget.
Right.
So we really, but we've kind of evolved on that, and so that's what we do every year. We start with a workshop. We talk about what Goal Net Zero really means. We provide a recipe, in a sense, of how to get there. So that usually takes about an hour and a half. We have a nice lunch that goes with that. And then we pile everyone on buses, and they're biodiesel fueled buses. And we go around and we visit these 4 or 5 homes and let people go in, talk to the owners, how they did it, how they planned for it, what it's costing them. We show them, their energy bills, all those kind of things, so people can really have a hands-on experience with what is involved in doing a Goal Net Zero house. And we've gotten, last year we had a house that was almost net zero, and we have a house this year that I think is going to be very, very close. They're just finishing it up, so that's what that is, and it brings a lot of people. We end up with about a third of the people who attend that being builders who want to become more and more involved in green building. We have about a third of them are usually designers and architects and engineers who are interested in learning more, and about a third of them are homeowners who are, wanting to go that direction. And so it creates this wonderful time. We sit over lunch and talk about, bring people who are interested in a subject together so that they can really explore it more and make contacts and things like that.
Now, this is something that you can also do with older homes as well. Is retrofitting an older home that difficult or expensive?
Well, it's more difficult. There's no question about that. Because when you're trying, it's easy to put solar panels on the roof if you've got a south-facing or even, they often work fine on a west-facing roof as well. But, it's the weatherizing part that, becomes more difficult on an older home, getting into those walls and beefing up the insulation levels. And, we have, I think in the United States, we've got about 140 million homes, and about 90 million of those were built before 1980. So they're really challenged in terms of their energy efficiency. So you have to get into those walls, and you usually have to swap out the windows. So it's a bigger project, but it's being done all the time. We're in the process of doing that in my own home right now. And there are a lot of incentives right now. We wish there were more. This would be an area that if the U.S. Congress was going to subsidize or provide stimulus money. The reason this is so important is that half of the energy that's used in the United States is used in buildings. So this is such a powerful way to really change how much energy we really consume. But people are doing it all the time, and in fact, on our tour this year, we're going to have a house that was a turn-of-the-century house, not this century, last century, And we're going to be showing how you go into those walls and, and upgrade all the insulation levels and everything. So that's part of what we want to do. And one of the exciting things this year is that every project that we have got a lot of do-it-yourself involvement in it, which is another way to really help change the economics of these kind of projects.
Mm-hmm. All sounds so very exciting. Do you see the public response actually growing, I'd like to say by leaps and bounds, but it's hard to weigh and measure that. But since you've gotten started, do you see public response really beginning to turn and want to go after something like this?
Yeah, I do. There's just no question about it, and I think economics are driving it. At this point, back in the 70s, it was kind of the fright of oil, the sort of scare.
Right.
And then I think it became really much more of an environmental passion. Today, it's not only economics, but it's energy security again.
Mm-hmm.
People, it's energy there's no question it's becoming more expensive. And then, there's out on that horizon, is it even going to be available, or is it going to be available reliably? So, you hear a lot about peak oil, and, there's just a lot of concern. And, as we're seeing, nuclear is not going to be the silver bullet that a lot of people hoped it would be. It comes with a huge price.
No, that's for sure.
So yeah, I think people are really feeling, in fact, last year at our tour, in the recession, we were we wondered what kind of attendance we would get, and it was as good as it had been in the middle of the boom. So, there are different things that drive it, but I think it's one of those things that just grows and grows.
I know you brought up the environmental impact that solar energy would take us to, which is certainly a lot less, I would say, not restrictive. It isn't the word I'm looking for. Risky, I guess, is what I'm looking at. And I bring that up because just today, people look on Yahoo News. They've got a news caption about BP oil. Hey, we've rebounded. We're at $5.6 billion in profit. By the way, we're going to be eyeing the Gulf of Mexico again.
Sure.
I'm thinking, what is the thinking behind these people here?
Yeah, seriously.
Environmental.
Environmental, yeah. It's, unfortunately, profit does really, really, rule our politics.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to look at the external costs, the so-called external costs of what it costs to the environment or it costs to health. We look right now, we've got a glut of natural gas from fracking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody's, hearing all of the controversy about fracking. And, we've got a glut that's occurred because everybody went out and wants to do this, the energy companies wanted to do this fracking. We're showing up with, contaminated wells and people, literally being able to light their water coming out of their pipe on fire.
Oh, brother.
So what price are we willing to pay for all this,
Mm-hmm.
And, I was just looking at a table this last week, which was looking at the CO2 emissions of wind, solar, biofuels, and the parts, this is how many parts it would be kilowatts, how many kilowatt hours in so many parts per million of CO2 emissions. And for the lowest was wind at 10. And then we went up to solar at, I think that was about 15. Even the biofuels, the highest one was 23. When you went to natural gas, it jumped up to 466. Coal was over 1,200. Oil was about 1,000. So everywhere you look at this, we have to do it. Plus, are we running out of those fossil fuels? Are we going to be impacted? Is that what's going on with the prices that we're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to need to do some of all of these, not clean coal, which is an oxymoron. There's just no question about that. But, a lot of it's just like goal net zero,
Right.
You got to meet it in the middle. You can't just be on supply side. Part of it has got to be reducing our demand.
Right.
That's the only way we're going to get through this,
I completely agree. In fact, I had the opportunity to go to a solar conference, call it an expo at the same time. It wasn't a gigantic affair, but what was really interesting is it was that I ended up spending, I think it was 2 or 3 days out there, and getting to know these people that are really involved in alternative energy and you know, the impact that we have on our environment with the way that we're doing things and how we can change that. And so there were, you know, you think it's just going to all be about solar power, but there was just so many aspects that this event carried with it. But what I found really astounding about being at this event was the enjoyable relationships and conversations that you had with people. You know, and you don't find that too often. I mean, these were people that were upbeat, intelligent, they were positive about what our future looked like as far as, you know, using environmentally friendly energy, green energy, if you will. And you just go, you know, boy, it would be great to just, you know, and I know it's an ideal world, you know, if it can actually happen, but why we can't seem to spend the politics in such a way to make this, you know, good for everybody now instead of wasting time until we've burned everything out and this is the only thing we have left.
Yeah, isn't that true? Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you really raised one of the most engaging thing about is the community. Mm-hmm. You know, it is people who really care about the community, they care about the environment. They have solutions. You know, that's why they're positive. They have solutions that, you know, that are not destructive.
Mm-hmm. You know, and one of the things I enjoyed was a really good hot dog cooked by the sun.
And there's always cookies, too. You know?
Oh, as a matter of fact, my wife actually made herself a pizza box that you actually bake a mini pizza in. You just put it out in the sun and bam, there you go. But, you know, the thing is, it's just so interesting, you know, the simplicity of what's going on here. And I would love to see it just really get moving and rolling to where the inertia is, you know, so strong there's no turning back.
Yeah, I absolutely. And then that's what keeps us going. That's why we at Solar Oregon keep, you know, that's a lot of us that are involved we've been involved with Solar Oregon in those whole 30 years. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so it's all about that keeps you committed and excited every day and feel like you know, really have a lot of purpose to your life.
Mm-hmm. Now, Catherine, can you tell people how they can find out more about Solar Oregon? And is this something that can be a nationwide website people can find out more about things?
Yeah, definitely. If they go on www.solaroregon.org.
SolarOregon.org is the website. Catherine Gray, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. It was a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
We encourage you, the listeners, also to join us at our website, which is beyond50radio.com. That's the number 5050. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter and visit us at our blog. We archive our shows there, as well as we have other great multimedia venues for you to use and share with others. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.